The terrible calm in his eyes made my skin prickle with goosebumps. He tapped the screen and suddenly disconnected phrases from weeks of my work presentations blared through the room. My voice, chopped and edited, now sounding breathy and intimate. Need you tonight. Can't wait. Nobody has to know. Worth the risk. The conference room went tomb silent. Then came scattered gasps, someone's coffee mug clattering against the table. My lungs seized. I couldn't breathe as my boss Ingrid's eyes locked onto mine, her expression hardening from confusion to disgust. "Turn that off," David whispered from across the table. He was the only one brave enough to speak. Brent's smile widened. The tech specialist himself speaks up. He silenced the audio and pulled something from his jacket, a small vial of clear liquid. "Stand up, David. This is inappropriate," Ingrid started. "What's inappropriate?" Brent cut her off. "Is what's been happening after hours between my wife and your star employee." Before anyone could move, Brent was behind David, emptying the vial over his shoulders. A putrid smell filled the room instantly, something between rotting eggs and ammonia. "Special chemical compound," Brent announced. "It reacts with certain proteins, the kind exchanged during intimate contact." Horror crawled across my skin as David stood paralyzed, the liquid seeping through his blue button-down. "Within minutes," Brent continued, "every spot where she touched you will glow bright yellow. Walk around, David. Let everyone see the proof." David's eyes found mine across the table, confused, humiliated, betrayed. We both knew those messages were about the toxic materials discovered in our newest children's products. Messages the senior team didn't want revealed. "This is assault," David said quietly. "What's assault is sleeping with another man's wife." Brent spat back. "Walk, or I send the unedited audio to everyone in your contact list, including your mother who's so proud of her honest son." I opened my mouth, but no sound emerged. The room tilted sideways. I gripped the table edge, watching as David stood, the liquid dripping from his sleeves. He took one halting step, then another, circling the massive conference table, while my colleagues pressed themselves against the walls to avoid contact. The stench grew overwhelming. Someone gagged. Through my peripheral vision, I saw Gordon and Pierce, two senior managers who'd buried David's safety findings, exchange satisfied glances. David completed his humiliating circuit, stopping at the doorway, his dignity in tatters. "Happy now?" he asked my husband. Brent's expression changed then, something dark and satisfied settling over his features. "Just getting started," he whispered. "If you're finding this story captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe to follow this journey. Your comments fuel these stories. I'd love to know what you think will happen next. My name is Nora, and until that morning, I believed I was living the right kind of life. Responsible, ethical. I worked at Kidshine developing children's products. Everything from bottles to bath toys to nursery furniture. For 8 years, I'd built a reputation for thoroughness, for caring about the details others overlooked. Brent and I had been married for 6 years. He worked in pharmaceutical sales, always charming, always persuasive. We met at a charity auction where he outbid everyone for a weekend getaway package, then immediately asked if I'd join him. Bold, confident, magnetic. We never had children, my choice initially. Then his. "We're too busy enjoying each other," he'd say whenever relatives asked. But the truth was more complicated. Somewhere in year 3, his attentiveness transformed into something possessive. Small freedoms disappeared, friends I no longer saw, hobbies that took too much time away from us. I adapted, believing relationships required compromise. When he installed home security cameras for protection, I accepted his explanation. When he began texting hourly check-ins, I told myself it meant he cared. The morning of the conference room incident had begun like any other. Brent kissed me goodbye, mentioned dinner plans. Nothing hinted at the storm brewing inside him. The liquid on David's shirt never turned yellow. There was nothing to reveal, because there was nothing between us, except professional concern. David had joined Kidshine 18 months earlier as head materials analyst. Brilliant, methodical, and painfully honest, he quickly earned respect throughout the company. 3 weeks before the incident, he'd requested a private meeting. "The new Baby Dream crib line contains prohibited levels of flame retardants," he'd said, sliding test reports across my desk. "And the Ducky Splash bath toys are leaching phthalates at 10 times the legal limit." I stared at the reports, stomach churning. "This can't be right." "I've tested them 3 times," he said. When I brought the results to Gordon, he told me to bury them. said they'd already manufactured 50,000 units. That night began our after-hours communication, strategizing how to gather enough evidence to force a recall before these products reached children. We worked separately, messaging only when necessary, building an airtight case to present to the company owners. I never told Brent, not because I was hiding an affair, but because he'd grown unpredictable whenever my work demanded extra attention. I'd mention a late meeting and watch his eyes cloud with suspicion. After the conference room humiliation, Gordon personally escorted David from the building, his belongings shipped later in a cardboard box. I was placed on 2 weeks personal leave while they assessed the situation. At home that night, Brent poured himself whiskey, seeming oddly energized. They offered me a consulting position, he announced. Impressed by my protective instincts, they said. Who offered you what? I asked, still numb. Gordon and Pierce. Said they need someone with my particular skills. He sipped his drink, eyes shining. Said you've been distracted lately, might need closer supervision. My mouth went dry. Brent, those messages were about product safety. David found toxic chemicals in children's items. We were gathering evidence. His laugh was sharp enough to cut. Save your stories, Nora. I've heard every word you two exchanged. You edited those recordings, I whispered. You purposely twisted everything. Brent set down his glass, approaching me with deliberate steps. A wife shouldn't keep secrets, he said softly, stroking my hair. I protect what's mine. That night, lying beside him in the dark, I realized the truth with crystal clarity. This wasn't love, it was ownership. And now he'd destroyed the one chance to protect countless children from harmful products. Maybe you're right, I whispered the next morning. Maybe I've been confused. Hope flickered in Brent's eyes. The anticipation of victory. I forgive you, he said magnanimously. I forced tears. I don't deserve you. Over the following days, I became the perfect, repentant wife. I called my boss, expressed contrition, requested an office transfer away from temptation. Brent monitored my phone calls, read my emails, drove me to and from work. At night, I'd catch him watching me with that satisfied smile, the smile of someone who believes they've won. The breaking point came during his sister Melody's wedding weekend. Brent seemed almost normal among family, laughing, dancing, playing with his 4-month-old niece Lily. We should reconsider having a baby, he suggested, his hand possessively circling my waist. That night in our hotel room, he fell asleep quickly, exhausted from socializing. A headache pounded behind my eyes. I reached for his toiletry bag, searching for aspirin, and found a small black notebook instead. The pages contained meticulous records of my daily life, what I wore, what I ate, who I spoke to, times I left rooms, how many minutes I spent in the bathroom. Each entry included a truthfulness rating and loyalty assessment. The most recent page had a new category, reproductive control timeline. My hands trembled so violently I nearly dropped the notebook. Each page chronicled me like a lab specimen, not a wife, not a partner, but a possession to be monitored. The reproductive control timeline included dates, fertility windows, and a disturbing note, tampering complete, 03/14. I flipped backward through the pages, finding coded references stretching back years. Subject becoming resistant to suggestion techniques. New compliance methods tested. Friend Ashley removed successfully. The room spun around me. Ashley had been my closest friend since college, until she suddenly moved across the country 3 years ago. Before leaving, she'd tried to warn me about Brent. I'd defended him, chosen him. Now I wondered what removed successfully actually meant. The bathroom door felt miles away. I stumbled toward it, barely making it before vomiting violently. Kneeling on the cold tile, forehead pressed against porcelain, a single thought crystallized with perfect clarity. I needed to escape this marriage alive. When Brent stirred, I was back in bed. The notebook returned exactly as I'd found it. Not feeling well, I murmured when he asked why I was awake. Must have been the wedding cake. I told you not to eat the third slice, he said, pulling me against him, always trying to prove me wrong. The next morning, watching him play with baby Lily, something new unfurled inside me. Not just fear for myself, but for everyone touched by Kidshine's toxic products, including this innocent child. His sister Melody had proudly shown me Lily's newly decorated nursery, filled with our company's products. Your brother helped us get everything at such a discount, she'd gushed. The Ducky Splash toys are her favorite bath time friends. Back home, I initiated phase 1 of my invisible rebellion. I think we need professional help, I told Brent, eyes downcast. I want to be better for you. His expression bloomed with triumph. That's very mature, Nora. And maybe we should sell this house, I added. Too many bad memories. We could start fresh somewhere new. Brent loved the idea. Another opportunity to isolate me further. As he researched neighborhoods and interviewed therapists who matched his specific criteria, I began rebuilding what he'd destroyed. First, I needed communication he couldn't monitor. Our teenage neighbor Zoe walked dogs for spending money. I paid her triple her usual rate to borrow her tablet for surprise anniversary research. Each night, while Brent showered, his one predictable 17 minutes of privacy, I reached out to David through an encrypted messaging app. Still have the test results? I wrote on day 3. His response came immediately. Everything. Been trying to contact Product Safety Commission. Nobody believes me without company letterhead. We need more than test results, I replied. We need visual proof consumers can understand. Over the next 4 weeks, while pretending to embrace couples therapy and house hunting, David and I reconstructed our case. He conducted additional independent tests. I secretly photographed internal memos, shipping schedules, and executive communications about the defective products. The yearly industry showcase approached KidShine's opportunity to display next season's offerings to retailers, parent bloggers, and safety advocates. Every major competitor would attend. Every important industry voice would be present. Brent had been invited as a special guest by Gordon and Pierce. They see my potential, he boasted. Said my protective instincts are exactly what the company needs. I'm so proud, I whispered, touching his cheek. You deserve recognition. The morning of the showcase, Brent selected my outfit, a conservative gray dress with a high neckline. Professional but not attention-seeking, he approved. We arrived separately. I'd convinced him I needed to support our team at the booth while he networked with executives. This is your moment to shine, I told him. Don't worry about me. The exhibition hall buzzed with activity. Elaborate product displays, demonstrations, champagne flowing freely. KidShine's booth stood prominently near the entrance. The controversial Ducky Splash toys and Baby Dream cribs featured front and center. I spotted Brent across the room, chatting with Gordon and Pierce, looking perfectly at ease among men who had buried evidence of harmful products. His laughter carried across the crowded space. Smile, Nora, hissed my colleague Trisha as I arranged pamphlets. The boss is watching. I smiled mechanically, my eyes sweeping the room. Right on schedule, a group of 8 influential parent bloggers entered, looking for new products to review. I'd contacted them weeks earlier using Zoe's tablet, promising an exclusive revealing demonstration. When they approached our booth, I stepped forward. Welcome to KidShine, I said warmly. Before I show you our newest offerings, may I ask, have you ever tested what your children are actually touching? They exchanged curious glances. I have something extraordinary to show you, I continued, reaching into my purse. Could each of you put these on, please? I distributed pairs of white cotton gloves and small ultraviolet flashlights I'd hidden in the lining of my purse. What's this for? Asked a blogger with millions of followers. Turn on the lights and run your gloved hands over any KidShine product, I instructed quietly. Then examine your gloves under the light. As they did, their expressions transformed from confusion to shock. Under the purple glow, invisible chemical residue on our products became brilliantly, unmistakably visible, matching exactly the harmful compound detailed in David's findings. What am I looking at? One woman demanded, her voice rising. Toxic phthalates at 10 times the legal limit, I said clearly. And the cribs contain prohibited flame retardants that cause neurological damage. Gasps rippled through the group. Phones emerged, recording the glowing evidence. Other attendees began clustering around, wondering what was happening. Across the exhibition hall, right on cue, David appeared on the main stage alongside 3 pediatricians I'd never met. The large screen behind them displayed molecular diagrams and test results. These chemicals have been linked to developmental delays, hormone disruption, and cognitive impairments, one doctor was saying into the microphone. The evidence comes directly from internal company testing, David added, his voice carrying through the speakers. Chaos erupted. Parents yanked their children away from our display. Retailers huddled in urgent conversations. Media representatives swarmed toward both our booth and the main stage. Through the commotion, I locked eyes with Brent across the room. Confusion gave way to dawning comprehension, then pure rage. He started pushing through the crowd toward me, but was immediately intercepted by panicking executives. A microphone appeared in front of me. thrust forward by a reporter. "Is it true these products are toxic?" she demanded. I took a deep breath. Those late-night work exchanges that sparked a jealous rampage were attempts to stop children from being harmed, I said clearly, "including my husband's baby niece, who uses these products daily." The crowd parted suddenly. Melody stood there, Lily squirming in her arms, her face ashen. "What are you talking about, Nora?" she asked. "Your brother destroyed our safety investigation to control me," I said, loud enough for nearby cameras to catch. He knew exactly what we were discussing in those messages. The room seemed to freeze as understanding washed over Melody's face. She looked down at her baby, then across the hall where Brent stood, with Gordon and Pierce. The executives were already backing away from him, creating visible distance. "Is my baby in danger?" Melody whispered. "Yes," I said simply. "I'm so sorry." The rage that transformed her features matched her brother's from across the room. She clutched Lily tighter and strode toward him, each step purposeful as a hunting cat. I slipped my wedding ring off, placing it on the display table beside a toxic duck toy. Product safety advocates were already distributing the evidence packages I'd arranged to have delivered. Parents crowded around the pediatricians, asking frantic questions. Through the chaos, I watched Brent's face contort as Melody reached him, as she thrust her baby toward him in accusation. As Gordon and Pierce vanished into the crowd, no one stood beside him now. I turned away, moving toward the exit. A hand touched my elbow. David, looking simultaneously exhausted and alive. "You did it," he said simply. "We did it," I corrected. "What happens now?" I paused at the door, looking back at the disintegrating showcase. "Now the children are safe," I said, "and I'm free." Behind us, someone called my name. I turned to see Trisha running toward us, face flushed with confusion. "Did you know?" she demanded. "All this time, did you know how dangerous these products were?" "Some of us tried to tell the truth," I said. "Some of us were silenced." "But why this way? Why not just report it to authorities?" I laughed, a genuine sound that surprised even me. "Because certain men made sure no one would believe us." I glanced back at Brent, now surrounded by angry parents and reporters. "And because some people only understand public humiliation." Trisha's eyes widened. "He's going to come after you," she whispered. "Let him try," I replied, pushing through the door into the bright afternoon sunlight. Outside, the warm air hit my face like freedom. David kept pace beside me. "Where will you go?" "Where?" I pulled Zoe's tablet from my purse. "I've been making arrangements." "Need company?" he asked. "Just until you're settled," he added quickly. "No pressure." I studied his face, honest, straightforward, so different from what I'd grown accustomed to. "Maybe," I said. "But first, I need to learn who I am without someone watching my every move." My phone buzzed, 27 missed calls from Brent in the past 10 minutes. As we reached the parking lot, it rang again. "Aren't you going to answer?" David asked. I silenced it permanently, dropped it into a nearby trash can. He doesn't get to control the conversation anymore. Across the lot, a taxi waited, another arrangement made through Zoe's tablet. The driver nodded as I approached. "You heading to the address you sent earlier?" he asked. "Yes," I confirmed, "and I'm not looking back." As the taxi pulled away, I caught sight of the exhibition hall doors bursting open. Brent emerged, scanning frantically in all directions. For a moment, our eyes met through the rear window. I held his gaze steadily until distance blurred his figure into insignificance. For the first time in years, I breathed without pain. The taxi wound through city streets as my mind raced. Freedom tasted strange, exhilarating, and terrifying simultaneously. I'd arranged temporary accommodations at a small rental cabin outside the city limits, paid in cash through an online marketplace using Zoe's tablet. "First time visiting our town?" the driver asked, making conversation. "No," I answered. "First time leaving it on my terms." 40 minutes later, gravel crunched beneath the tires as we approached a modest wooden structure nestled among pine trees. I paid the driver, including a generous tip for discretion, and stood alone as the taxi disappeared down the road. Inside, the cabin was basic but clean. Kitchenette, bathroom, bedroom, and small living area with a worn couch. No cameras, no monitoring systems, no husband tracking my movements. The silence felt like a physical presence. I placed my single suitcase on the bed and removed the burner phone I'd purchased weeks earlier. One text message waited from David. "It's everywhere. Every news outlet picked it up. You okay?" I replied simply, "Safe." Updates when possible. Next, I powered up the laptop I'd secretly purchased. Public Wi-Fi would be risky, so I'd arranged for a private hotspot under a different name. Opening the browser, I typed Kidshine Toxic Products into the search bar. The screen filled with breaking news stories. Major recall: children's products contain dangerous chemicals. Industry scandal. Whistleblowers expose cover-up. Stock plummets. Kidshine faces multiple lawsuits. My throat tightened. Children would be protected now. But this was only the beginning. The doorbell rang, unexpected and jarring. My heart hammered as I approached the peephole. Had Brent somehow tracked me already? Relief flooded through me at the sight of an older woman with silver hair. The property owner, based on the listing photos. "Just checking you found everything okay," she said when I opened the door. "Not many folks out here this time of year." "That's exactly why I chose it," I replied. "I needed quiet." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Well, I'm just down the road if you need anything." No questions asked. After she left, I returned to my research. Brent would be looking for me, that was certain. He wouldn't accept losing control easily. But I'd spent years watching him, learning his patterns while he thought he was the only one observing. I knew exactly how he would react. First, he'd check our credit cards and bank accounts, all frozen now. Then he'd call friends and family, none of whom knew my location. Finally, he'd return home, certain I'd have to come back eventually for my belongings. What he wouldn't expect was that I'd already removed everything truly important weeks ago. Legal documents, irreplaceable photos, family heirlooms, small items taken gradually, their absence disguised by rearrangement. My phone pinged with another message from David. "Press conference tomorrow. Kidshine execs throwing B under the bus, saying he misled them about product safety to pursue personal vendetta." I smiled grimly. Of course they would. Men like Gordon and Pierce never accepted responsibility. They found scapegoats. Brent had made himself the perfect target with his public meltdown. The next morning, I watched the press conference livestream. Gordon stood at a podium, face appropriately grave, announcing a complete recall of all affected products. He portrayed Brent as a manipulative outsider who had deliberately sabotaged their safety protocols to target an innocent employee. "We were misled by someone we trusted," Gordon declared. Brent Walsh ingratiated himself with our executive team, while deliberately obscuring crucial safety data. "We are cooperating fully with authorities." The camera panned to Pierce, who added, "We have evidence that Mr. Walsh tampered with communications between our materials analyst and safety coordinator to create the appearance of impropriety. They were throwing Brent to the wolves to save themselves." The livestream cut to reporters questioning a haggard-looking Brent outside his home, our home. "My wife is missing," he was saying, voice cracking with what looked like genuine concern. "I'm worried she's been manipulated by her colleague. If anyone has information..." I turned off the video, stomach churning. Even now, he was spinning a narrative that made him the victim, me the helpless pawn. His greatest talent had always been making others believe his version of reality. 3 days passed in relative solitude. I ventured out only for necessities, paid exclusively in cash. Each night, I added to my documentation a comprehensive timeline of Brent's control, manipulation, and eventual sabotage. Not for the authorities, not yet. This was for me, to prevent myself from doubting my own experiences when the inevitable guilt surfaced. On day 4, the landlady knocked again, this time holding a newspaper. "Thought you might want to see this," she said, handing it over. The headline read, "Pharmaceutical Rep Under Investigation. Corporate Espionage and Domestic Abuse Allegations Mount." Beneath was Brent's professional headshot, confident smile, now seeming sinister in context. The article detailed how his former employer had launched an internal investigation, discovering he had frequently accessed confidential information outside his authorization. "Thanks," I told her, hands trembling slightly. "My sister works for the local shelter," she said carefully. "If you need resources, just say the word." That night, another text from David. "B showed up at my apartment, alternated between threats and bribes. Wanted to know where you are." "What did you tell him?" I typed back. "That he should be more worried about what the SEC is finding in his financial records than where you're staying." I sat straighter. "What do you mean? Remember how you said he kept mentioning his investment genius? Turns out he's been moving money through some questionable channels. Someone anonymous tipped off regulators." A small smile touched my lips. I hadn't tipped off anyone, but I knew who had. Melody, protecting her baby and punishing her brother simultaneously. Week 2 brought torrential rain and new developments. Kid Shine announced leadership restructuring. Gordon and Pierce were stepping down to spend time with family. Corporate speak for forced resignation. The company appointed an independent safety review board headed by one of the pediatricians who had appeared with David at the showcase. Brent's media appearances grew increasingly desperate. He'd hired a private investigator to find me. He'd created a Find Nora social media campaign, portraying himself as the worried husband searching for his manipulated wife. Some believed him. Others remembered the exhibition hall incident, now immortalized in dozens of videos taken by shocked attendees. The footage of him humiliating David had also resurfaced, undermining his concerned husband persona. I continued gathering evidence, building my case methodically. Just as Brent had cataloged my every move, I now documented his history of control. Bank statements showing withdrawn funds I never saw. Medical records indicating canceled birth control prescriptions I hadn't authorized. Email exchanges with my former friends that had mysteriously stopped after he reviewed my accounts for security concerns. 3 weeks after my departure, I received a letter forwarded through multiple channels from Melody. Inside was a single page. He's going to lose everything. The investigation expanded to his personal finances. They found something big. I'm sorry I never saw who he really was. Lily and I are safe. Are you? That night, I made my decision. It was time for the final phase. I texted David, ready. The following morning, I dressed carefully in clothes I'd purchased specifically for this moment. Professional, but distinctly different from anything Brent had selected for me. I took a bus into the city, then a taxi to the federal building. The investigating officer listened intently as I provided my statement and evidence. We've been building a case against your husband, she explained. Your testimony connects several missing pieces. What happens now? I asked. We have enough for an arrest warrant, she replied. Financial fraud, corporate espionage, evidence tampering, domestic abuse. But we need you to understand the process can be challenging for victims. I'm not a victim anymore, I said quietly. I'm a witness. She nodded approvingly. We'll need you to come in tomorrow to sign formal statements. For tonight, we can arrange protective accommodation. That won't be necessary, I said. I know exactly where I need to be. Hours later, I stood on the front step of our home, Brent's home now. Twilight cast long shadows across the manicured lawn. Through the window, I could see him pacing, phone pressed to his ear. The security cameras I'd once feared now worked in my favor. He would know I was here. The door opened before I could knock. Nora, he breathed, relief washing over his features. Thank God. Where have you been? I've been worried sick. May I come in? I asked formally. Confusion flickered across his face before he stepped aside. Of course. This is your home. The house smelled exactly as I remembered. His cologne, the lemon cleaner he preferred, the subtle staleness of closed windows. Everything looked unchanged, as though preserved in amber. You've lost weight, he observed, reaching for me. I stepped back. Don't touch me. His expression hardened, then softened deliberately. The practiced modulation I'd seen countless times. You're upset. Understandable after everything that's happened. Those people manipulated you, Nora. But you're home now. We can fix this. Fix what exactly? I asked, moving toward the kitchen. The fact that you doctored messages to humiliate my colleague? That you've been monitoring my every move for years? That you tampered with my birth control? He followed, maintaining precise distance. You're confused. David poisoned you against me. No, Brent. You poisoned children's toys, then helped cover it up to get closer to executives. That's ridiculous. I never knew about any product issues. I smiled thinly, reaching into my bag. Remember how you always insisted on handling the home security system? How you showed me those camera feeds could be accessed remotely, from anywhere? His face paled slightly. What you didn't realize, I continued, is that they record automatically to cloud storage, including the night you met with Gordon and Pierce in our living room, discussing how to handle the troublesome safety reports while I was visiting my mother. I placed my laptop on the counter, turned it toward him. I've reviewed some interesting footage. Would you like to see? For the first time, genuine fear registered in his eyes. What do you want, Nora? Justice, I replied simply. For myself and for every child who could have been harmed. He lunged suddenly, reaching for the computer. I stepped back, already prepared. Don't bother. It's backed up in multiple locations, and federal investigators have copies of everything. You're bluffing, he whispered, but uncertainty had replaced his confidence. Am I? The same way I was hiding an affair, The same way I was confused about your controlling behavior, I moved toward the front door. Federal agents will be here tomorrow morning with a warrant. I suggested they come early. I know how you like to start your day promptly at 6. Understanding dawned on his face. You planned this all along. No, Brent, you planned it. Every time you monitored my calls, every time you isolated me from friends, every time you made me doubt my own perceptions, you created the perfect student of surveillance and strategic thinking. His shoulders slumped momentarily before anger sparked in his eyes. Nobody will believe you. I've built a narrative. The concerned husband, the loyal partner. You built it on quicksand, I replied. Check your email. While we've been talking, every person in your contact list has received unedited security footage of you discussing product safety cover-ups in our living room. Your sister received additional footage of you planning to tamper with my birth control. Your parents got the clips of you cataloging my movements in that little black notebook. The blood drained from his face. You can't. I already have. I reached for the doorknob. You taught me well, Brent. You demonstrated exactly how to destroy someone's reputation, their dignity, their sense of safety. The difference is, I did it with truth. His phone began buzzing incessantly, notifications flooding in as people viewed the footage. You'll have nothing, he hissed, desperation replacing calculation. I'll make sure of it. I already have everything I need, I replied. Freedom. I stepped outside, closing the door on his shattered world. David waited in a car across the street, engine running. Did he threaten you? He asked as I slid into the passenger seat. He tried, I said, but his power was always an illusion I chose to believe in. As we drove away, I didn't look back at the house or the man inside it. Tomorrow would bring formal statements, legal proceedings, the slow, grinding wheels of justice. But tonight, I had reclaimed my story. Where to? David asked. Forward, I answered. Just forward. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Your support helps bring more stories of courage and justice to light. Have you ever had to reclaim your power from someone who tried to control you? Share your experience in the comments below. You never know who might need to hear that they're not alone.